peculiar creatures. Hi, I'm Smud, and this is new.
It's time for the network.
When a strange craft appeared and zapped it.
Have you ever heard a strange sound at night? Objects moving in plain sight, being witness to a little man that wasn't there? Well, be not afraid, bitch. You are not alone. Over 1 in 5 Americans have experienced a ghost at their domicile, and you are a part of that lucky few. What can you do? Can you run? Fight? Banish those demons? No! Don't really angry with the demons, pussy. Now that they are here forever. And the only thing you can do is learn to live with them. And we have the perfect product just for you. Come on down to our YouTube channel, Monster Fuckers. That's right, Monster Fuckers. If you're scared of what goes bump in the night, we'll show you it's just us. We'll fuck that fear right out of you, guaranteed. You won't be afraid of no sissy specter after this. So just come on down to Monster Fuckers. That's MONSTERFUCKERS. Subscribe now. We get a free vial of off-white ectoplasm, harvested fresh from my private collection.
So, I have a stupid question for you. What do ghost hunters fear? It's a question so silly with only one clear answer. Ghost. It doesn't even take long to explain why they're scary. The last ghost I saw was my grandpa appearing in the bathroom while I was on the toilet. As soon as I saw his rotten visage, I don't even need to tell you what he scared out of me. A urinary tract infection. It scared me so much, in fact, I forgot the fact I don't even believe in ghosts. Which is actually more common than you might think. Believing in ghosts? I mean, I don't mean not believing in ghosts, okay? According to the survey by YouGov, 1 in 5 Americans say they've encountered a ghost, and even 2 in 5 say they exist. A staggering statistic if you ignore the part where the survey only covers about 1,000 people, which is closer to 333.3 million Americans than it is to negative 333.3 million Americans. So, who's to say if it's a reliable stat or not? What me and my dead grandpa find interesting about this isn't just people seeing ghosts on the TV. Another study of 600 adults, this time taking place in Argentina, shows that half of the applicants have experienced a ghost in some form, ranging from sensing a presence to seeing one with their own eyes. So, statistically speaking, that's an awful lot of people who have experienced the paranormal. It's the equivalent to 2 slices of pizza, or a large slice of cheese, or Pac-Man opening his gaping maw to devour innocent, unsuspecting ghost, of which there is no evidence of ghost. The best we got is top 10 most compelling pieces of evidence that prove ghosts are real.
Ghost sightings aren't actually ghost sightings, but beings that live.
Family Guy.
Peter, the
Ghost.
is here.
Sure, I can jump up and down like Courage the Cowardly Dog and tell everyone I see that Grandpa isn't dead, he just lives next to the poop knife. But if no one else can see him, there ain't much point to it, I'm afraid. Enter Ghost Hunters. Busters, Big Busters, Bust-A-Move for the PS2, etc. Your friendly neighborhood poltergeist catchers who cut through all the ghost stories and movies to show us undeniable proof of phantoms beyond the pale.
A similar story occurred in the state of New Jersey about 20 years ago.
They do this by going to places with high paranormal activity, areas that have a strong connection to the lands beyond. These are the types of places that no sane man will go, like a popular hotel that has a 4.5 on TripAdvisor. Ooh, would you look at that? It's got good water pressure. How nice. You also have your more traditionally spooky places, and that's where these apparition researchers excel. When they're in this type of environment though, do they ever get scared?
I'm fine, my headphones are gone!
And if so, by what? To answer this question, I require the aid of at least 2 unconsenting ghoul squads to act as demonstrations. To dissuade bias in my assessment of phantom pursuers, I will use a dartboard and blindfold to select the 2 groups. By divine providence, Ghost Adventures and Sam and Colby have been selected. Hallelujah. What these 2 test groups will demonstrate is how people react in the face of the otherworldly. In the case of Ghost Adventures, who I'll be calling GA from here on out, it is the response of aggression, or fight.
Quit toying with us!
In the case of YouTube Tulpas, Sam and Colby, it is shocked bewilderment, or the flight response.
Oh my god! You can see it! You can see it!
These Revenant researchers' reactions to ghosts are both more nuanced than this. slightly, but each group displays a human response to an unknown threat quite well. However, we need to set up the standard structure for a ghost hunt before we start. Fortunately, most apparition charting follows a standard formula that can be broken down into 5 main sections. With this, I can point out how Wraith Watcher's fear builds up over an investigation. I will then give material explanations in lieu of paranormal activity. Because, listen, I'm not going to hide my bias here. I don't believe in ghosts. And it's far more interesting to me to figure out how a ghost hunt is scary without using catch-all explanations like a ghost did it. I mean, if you tried, you can blame everything on ghost. Lights turned off? Ghost. The dishes haven't been washed?
Still losing.
Ghost. The reason you feel scared beyond belief every night before you sleep? Ghost. More on that later. Moving on, here is a breakdown of a typical ghost hunt. 1. An episode will begin by explaining the haunted house they'll be visiting.
Sign. This establishment is purported to be haunted.
2. Followed by getting some form of expert's opinion.
He had become demonically possessed.
3. Then, a daytime investigation of the haunted house is conducted, typically with the aid of a psychic. It's generally accepted that daytime equals fewer ghosts. Therefore, it's safer to bring non-professional ghost wranglers into the house at this stage.
My last name is
4. When it becomes night, however, that's when the big guns come out. It's just the hunters, the ghoulies, and the state-of-the-art ghost snatching technology.
We clearly heard a little child's voice.
5. After all of this is an epilogue, where the hunters discuss what they've seen, and come to some form of conclusion on if the building is really haunted.
Believe it or not, the answer is usually yes. Weird how that happens, huh?
It would be more of a demonic spirit.
I think so, absolutely.
Now that we know the structure of a typical ghost hunt, let's mark down all the time someone may be scared. To start with, a revenant meddler must have already heard about the hauntings of the building, otherwise they wouldn't be there in the first place. And the experts these people talk to leave a lot to be desired in terms of reliability.
And the words I could hear just plain today, like I'm talking to you, die game, die game, die game.
Maybe it's just a me thing, but I don't much trust the word of the guy who is selling a book about the place the hunters are investigating. 2, in fact. Pragmatically speaking, they have a lot more to gain by playing up the spookiness of a given location, which, in turn, creates more fear for the Banshee snoopers. Then the daytime investigation is more of a guided tour than anything. Sometimes the psychics and experts are just straight up tour guides of the establishment, and know exactly how to gin up the fear in the audience and the white chasers. Finally, the actual hunt. So, after being inundated by ghost stories and strange happenings throughout the day, the phantom studiers must spend the night at the source of this ghostly energy, which is a lot to have in the back of your mind when you're inside a dilapidated building in the middle of the night. Anytime the building creaks,
okay, so again, we're hearing all kinds of noises, and they keep coming from the attic.
or a gust of winds gets blown, can put a person's mind more and more on edge.
Very common when in the presence of a spirit for your body to react with goosebumps or seeing the hair on your arms or neck stand on end.
That brings us to the blazing candle on a cake of otherworldly fear, ghost devices, which work by, wait a second, I just realized I don't know how these Fisher-Price knockoffs work. Let me Google it and... oh, they don't work. Well then, apparently they detect things like radio waves, or movement, or electrical interference, which can be triggered by a lot of mundane things other than ghosts. Or, in the case of spirit boxes, which sweep radio frequencies really fast, giving entities the energy they need to communicate with us. Here is what said energy sounds like from a GA episode. Oh, was it unclear?
Here's the EVP with the audio enhanced.
Here's what the ghost supposedly said. And here's a completely random video that has nothing to do with anything, really.
You will only hear the word you are reading.
But hey, The blinking machine is blinking, so obviously a ghost is in the room, and you should strongly consider killing yourself as a means of escape. That is your average ghost hunt. As you might imagine, going through all of that might put you a little bit on edge. It makes me think, however, why would anyone go through this if they genuinely believe in ghosts? Besides the obvious option of they don't believe in ghosts, you're not doing this for those sweet BitChute views. But I'm no psychiatrist, and I'm not here to psychoanalyze if they really believe in ghosts or not. So when I see the GA crew take the opinion of a man whose only expertise is getting people to buy the same book with a different cover, I can only assume they actually believe them. Otherwise, why would they climb 20 meters off the ground and walk on top of rusted through metal if they really didn't believe in what's happening? To them, proving ghosts are real is of utmost importance, if nothing else, to justify the situations they put themselves in. Because if ghosts aren't real, then they'll be running around some musty old building shouting into the void, "Come at me, bro," looking for any excuse to take off their shirts every episode, for no reason.
I want to see what it's all about. Come and harm me.
I would later regret that command.
Sam and Colby, on the other hand, follow mostly the same path as GA. They show a little more skepticism to the upright individuals that are definitely not lying to their faces for money.
Once we got inside the park, we wanted to make sure that there were no hidden devices in their shoes that could make these knocking noises, so earlier that day, we bought them new ones.
Unfortunately, their skepticism often doesn't go far enough, giving these paranormal investigators/researchers, as described by their very cool website, ample leeway to fake their ghost communication abilities. Again, not saying it's faked, of course, just an opportunity to do so. The Blowjobs brothers' reactions during a ghost hunt is also interesting. They usually start the hunt with the typical elegance of TikTokers. But sometimes it develops into something more personal. Like when they were talking to spirit mediums who communicate as Sam and Colby's dead family members, causing the two of them to break out into tears.
Lady Golok.
Your grandma?
It's my grandma. There's no fucking way.
There's no way. They knew her.
There's no fucking way.
Perhaps this is the reason they believe in ghosts. Because if I ever found out some jerk-offs were pretending to talk with my dead granddad. And yet, it is that steadfast belief that is such an intrinsic part of ghost hunting that interests me. The point of a spectre perceiver's job is to prove ghosts to the public at large, and make money, to investigate if ghost sightings have any merit to them, and to build up a body of evidence. And yet, the very structure of these hunts throw away any sense of scientific rigor.
That's crazy. It's in a different spot every time. It's not the same color motion either.
Anything you can point at and say, "Aha! A ghost snail trail has appeared on a sticky carpet," can usually be disproven by all the other factors during an investigation. Yet, why are haunt harassers and regular ghost believers, for that matter, so adamant that ghosts exist? Perhaps there's a type of evidence that is incomprehensible to me, but crystal clear to others. Evidence that would explain why people believe in the paranormal, and why ghost hunters are willing to go through all sorts of emotional turmoil to seek it out.
That is the fucking shit that makes me believe in all of this.
Hey, have you heard the news? Have you seen the signs? Well, if you haven't, you need to get a fucking clue, you dumb motherfucker. There is a demon living inside your walls waiting for the right opportunity. That's right, dumbass. Your pussy is fucked freeway some Sunday if you don't follow our advice and come on down to Monster Fuckers, where we'll make a home video of putting that demon in a dress and making it call us daddy. Guaranteed. It will be an acrobat at a circus, a lot of tricks it's gonna do on our trapeze. Come on down to Monster Fuckers and have all of your fear melt away like cum running down your wife's asshole.
I started this video with a very weird question. Some may even call it a irrational question. That question being, what do ghost hunters fear? If I'm going to frame this fear of ghosts as something irrational, then there's already a word for that. Phobia. A fear so great, there's simply no rational explanation. You can think of it like your nan having an old biscuit tin of sewing supplies. The biscuit tin justifies itself, as it has, and always will be your nan's house. Questioning how or why it got there holds a self-evident answer. The same can be said of our own fears. The basis of what is known as phobias. A common one would be arachnophobia, a fear of spiders. And as an example, here's a photo of a Phoclus phalangeloid. Notice its large fangs, its bulging eyes. It's hair that stands on end, covering its large, spindly limbs. These are traits used to describe the scariness of a spider, an example of why they should be feared intrinsically. But some of you may already be wise to my rug pull, that the common name for Phoclus phalangeloid is a daddy longlegs, an insect no bigger than an infant's hand. That's not even technically a spider. Even if we were to look at actual spiders, like tarantula, huntsman, or wolf spiders, these trigger a response from arachnophobes, yet they are entirely harmless to humans, unless you are a baby, which, as we all know, don't count as humans. Being scared of most spiders is like being scared of birds or really small puppies. Someone may counter that and say, well, what about the actually dangerous spiders? Well, as someone who lives near a man-killing spider known as the whitetail, I'm not scared of the spider part of that name. I'm scared of the man-killing part. Big difference. Oh wait, turns out whitetails aren't deadly to humans at all. Fuck! Why are there so many misconceptions about spiders? Fuck! This whole section of the video is ruined now. Fuck! And it's one of the differences that separate regular fears from phobia. Perhaps one more example is needed to demonstrate the difference between fear and phobia. Have a look at this. Does this make you feel anything? Like a weird force comes over you, or just a simple feeling of something isn't right? If you did feel anything, then you know more about trypophobia than you thought, which is the extreme fear of holes, known as the 2003 film about a group of kids being forced to dig holes all summer. I mean an extreme fear of many small holes side by side, which does include the 1998 book, weirdly enough. There is something to these images I can't quite explain. Just looking at them makes me feel uneasy. For me, however, the feeling is fleeting. All it takes is a couple of minutes and it just looks like a porous rock, which are so common we can find them on pretty much every lake or seabed. But even if I know the fear I feel is unfounded, I can't help but try to explain it. Coming up with excuses like, it is human pattern recognition kicking in, telling me what I am seeing are actually many eyes staring at me. Or these holes could be home to dangerous animals, and if I stare at them long enough, something is going to jump out at me. As if I was experiencing nyctophobia, like the blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy in the cult classic video game, Grabbed by the Ghoulies. Okay, I'll stop referencing obscure media from the early 2000s now. Either way, both of those explanations of trypophobia could be true. Yet it is still my mind grasping at straws, trying to explain something that would not matter if it is explained or not. At the end of the day, every time I look at these holes, I feel scared. Luckily for me, this feeling isn't stopping me from going to the beach or lake or using a loofah in the shower. But for some people, it may. I mentioned before that there are multiple definitions separating fear from phobia. The other key distinction is that phobia stops you from living your life. Like going for a swim if you have thalassophobia, or stopping you from talking to 10 out of 10 baddies, absolute smoke shows, beautiful bodacious babes, if you have transphobia. It can even cause people to act in very strange ways. They will not just avoid the cause of phobia, but in some cases, even seek it out. Some people are married to the phobic object. In order to avoid it, his eyes seek it out. He finds it in obscure places. He sees it with his peripheral vision. A person becomes so aware of their own fear, they could even start to see it in places where it shouldn't be. Like a spider crawling up the side of this video. Now, the astute among you might think I'm going to give an example of another phobia, this time being Casperophobia, which would be the fear of ghosts, described as an extreme fear of weird CGI cum-splooges, often found in those who have seen the 1995 spooktacular movie Casper.
Don't come near me, you spiteful spook! We shall
Ha, got you! I never said anything about referencing movies from before the early 2000s. Okay, I'll stop now. But no such phobia of ghosts exist. That is because ghosts are not the cause of fear. They're merely the symptom, or the explanation. Let's say you are someone who has nyctophobia, an extreme fear of dark. Your fear is so great you start to see things in the darkness, like a face appearing down the hallway. If you know you are alone and you see a person, There are only 3 conclusions. 1. You aren't actually alone, that's just old Aunt Chloe in the doorway. 2. That is a hallucination your mind has conjured up, and there is nothing there. Finally, 3. That is a ghost, because you are alone, and surely you are off sound mind. It wouldn't imagine something so real. You can see it with your own eyes, they would never fail you, and you know you aren't insane. There's no way something so vivid can be a hallucination, right? Unfortunately, for the person in this scenario who saw a little man who wasn't there, they are suffering from psychosis, where a person's brain does not comprehend reality as we know it. It can be often quite difficult to know if you are experiencing psychosis. Not because the effects aren't obvious, referencing this little man who wasn't there, but because it is often hard to come to terms with a failing body. Thus, the patient, lying paralyzed in his hospital bed, does not see himself as ill. I mean, I see Grandpa Joe all the time. That doesn't mean anything. It's not like nobody else sees him, right? That's a sentence that could be more common than you realize. If you remember the studies at the start of this video, where the applicants said they had experienced a ghost, this is by all means psychosis, and coming to terms with that can be harder for some than others. Like the studies surveying the elderly, it was reported that 47% of the 300 applicants reported seeing hallucinations of their dead spouse, with an observation being made that, quote, few elderly people tell others about their apparitions, through fear of ridicule. Isn't that such an interesting insight of one's own psychosis? To imagine your dead spouse who you loved just walking around your home like nothing ever happened, but then having to reconcile with the fact they're not real, to hold on to your own sanity with an iron-tight grip. I can only assume the reason that psychosis takes this form of a dead spouse because that person loved them, and desires to hang onto that memory as long as possible, therefore it manifests into their world. But, if that's the case, where do young people like me get the form of an apparition? Well, from the environment around us usually. In the past, these things would have been passed down as ghost stories. Storytellers speaking into reality the form of a ghost, which will then be overlaid into one psychosis. They would let their own imagination run wild, cooking up such evil machinations such as gnomes. Nowadays, people can skip forming their own mental image, and just get whatever's on TV or TikTok. Kids truly don't respect the blood and toil people used to go through to imagine horrors beyond their own comprehension. Now they can just watch the nightly news. Heyo! We're living in a dying society where crimes against humanity happen as a daily occurrence. And this is how people can see the same demons in their individual psychosis. Have you heard of the Hat Man by chance? A shadowy figure that skulks over people's bodies during sleep paralysis, giving them the old stink eye. It is a figure that's been spreading over the internet for some time now, eventually making its way to TikTok and getting millions of views. Now the Hat Man is a common hallucination for people who suffer from sleep paralysis or psychosis.
The story actually comes from a Reddit user who's a therapist. And this user had a patient.
But what about people who fear ghosts? The people who interpret some ghosts as malevolent demons, ghost hunters. How does something from someone's own subconscious appear to them as malicious? The hallucinations psychosis can project do not exist in a vacuum. They may appear as an apparition of a person you know or even loved, but the contents of a ghost are the thoughts and feelings of the person who sees it. If you are a person who suffers from sleep paralysis, it doesn't matter what the form of the person in the corner takes. They are a manifestation of the thoughts, I cannot move, I want to move, please, for the love of God, let me control my own body. The same applies to a ghost hunter. The apparition can take the form of whatever ghost story they just heard about. The only thing that matters is that the ghost is the only thing standing between a ghost hunter and the world not treating them like some insane lunatic that needs mental help or to be laughed at. How would you even know your perception of reality is unfounded? Sure, seeing a little gnome-like creature waving at you from the window might be obvious, but what if your hallucinations are more insidious? It doesn't take the form of monsters or dead relatives, but instead something more mundane, like your neighbors, police officers, medical practitioners, even your own children. Would you be able to tell you're mentally unwell? No man is able to appreciate his personality in any adequate way, being held within its own bounds, just as our astronomers are unable to see the shape of the galaxy in which our own solar system revolves.
turtle is mine!
Have you ever felt like something is right behind you? Do you ever hear people in your house talking about you? Have you ever felt like something wasn't right? Well, I've got bad news for you, fuckface, and your bitchin' wife. These voices are as real as the cum I pumped into your mom last night. That's right, guaranteed pump fill. And if you wanted some good news for once in your sad life, I have the perfect solution for your sissy ass. Open the door. Just reach your limp wrist over and turn the handle. Open the door. Let the monster fuckers into your life for the last time. Open the door. Have any of you ever wondered what it's like to not be of sound mind? Take a moment to imagine yourself on the motorway as multiple cars start their engines and follow you. The cars tailgate you with drivers openly speaking into walkie-talkies, being harassed by on-the-job criminal investigation, followed on foot and car by police officers. Imagine not even escaping this harassment in your own home. Strange phone calls from private numbers that just hang up. Hearing the same strange sounds for over 20 years, in different homes, different cities, and different states. Sometimes every 5 minutes, sometimes continuously, sometimes very loudly. You're not even able to get a good night's rest. Many restless nights getting gas and electrocuted, not thinking you would live long enough to see the daylight hours the next morning. You can stop imagining now, and come to terms that these people experience a form of schizophrenia known as gang stalking. Contrary to what you may think, gang stalking isn't just being stalked by vulnerable people. Well, it is, but in these cases, it's not just a couple dudes poking you on Facebook. It's entire government bodies, your friends, neighbors, the police. Everyone, no matter where you go, are a part of the stalking. It is as if you woke up someday and the whole world now hates you for no discernible reason. People who suffer gang stalking say that it began when they are an adult, though some say that is only the time they realize it is happening. Recontextualizing old memories, something as innocuous as an ice cream man giving you the wrong ice cream, is an early sign you could be being gang stalked. This might cause you to start thinking about the logistical implications of such an undertaking, but I'll save your last 2 brain cells from thinking too hard and tell you. Gang stalking is a symptom of schizophrenia, with people who suffer from it calling themselves targeted individuals, or just TIs for short. Gang stalking as a concept is something that couldn't reasonably exist. Even high-profile cases of government stalking, like that of Edward Snowden, didn't involve blocking his trolley in a supermarket and writing down how many frosted mini-wheats he bought. Hard to organize that, really. And that's the point. It is not something that can be rationally answered, so an irrational conclusion must be used. Thinking you saw a ghost once in a while can be brushed off. You can try to understand it, or just treat it as an odd occurrence. The same can be said when you think that, I have undergone extreme poisoning within my home. My body literally has been shocked more times than I can count. The most occurrences happen when I try to go to sleep at night. Sleep deprivation is, I am assuming, one of their favorite punishments. If that is what you experience every day, then it becomes inseparable. The terror of this reality was, for him, undeniable. Okay, so that sounds awful, I hate that. But how does something like this even develop? Before, I talked about psychosis being a pre-existing condition, where ghosts would be introduced as a form for hallucinations to take. Same applies here, only to a much more extreme degree. I, much like most TIs, found out about gang stalking on the internet. I think I had heard the term before, but I only really learned what it was when I was listening to a podcast about weird far-right game developers. It's a long story. Either way, one of these developers was a man named Joseph Cantrell. He made small flash games that are based around killing minorities in increasingly deranged methods. He also got a job at Microsoft, where he met his victim, who Joseph killed on the side of the street. The only thing of note this piece of shit left behind before being sent to prison was a journal on his website. In this journal, it describes him falling down a rabbit hole of weird sounds at night, hearing people whispering behind him at night, and seeing a surveillance drone while walking his pet. All of this coincides with a heavy descent to drug use, of which he has a review of every drug he has taken. Before he was arrested, this journal and the website it was hosted on were all publicly viewable, and there are many more people like him writing their stories online, though most haven't ended in the same tragedy as his. mainly because most haven't ended in general. But this is how gang stalking spreads. Not through means of government agencies finding new victims to harass, but through TIs sharing their stories online. If you are someone who suffers from psychosis or schizophrenia, you could have stumbled upon r/gangstalking, or Gangstalking World, or the many Quora threads discussing gang stalking. However a TI would have learned of it, it is now the form of their psychosis, with their own thoughts of such a miserable landscape filling the bodies of gang stalkers. And it is not something that ever ends. From the study reviewing 50 accounts of gang stalking, none of the writers of the narratives describe their experiences as having ended. Whether it were to end or not, this causes a TI to think of any reason as to why it could be happening to them, or who is doing it to them. In the case of Billy from this Vice documentary, he says it could be bigots who don't like the fact he is openly gay.
And people warned me that as a gay man, you know, it was maybe brave of me to rent this space. When 20 or 30 cars are hazing you on the freeway, behind you, in front of you, on both sides of you, completely controlling how fast you go, whether you exit, whatever you do, this is something bigger than that.
Or in many cases, it is like Joseph Cantrell, where the people stalking him are some variation of every slur that's ever been spoken. Maybe I should have mentioned that in the phobia section. Either way these living nightmares manifest, they are now stuck with constantly thinking everyone is out to make their lives a living hell. Surely, however, this could all be solved by a simple visit to a psychiatrist, right? When I said TIs thought that everyone was out to get them, doctors are a pretty important part of them, with as many brackets as you can imagine. That is for a couple of reasons. For one, doctors are treated as a magical cure-all for people suffering from mental disorders. To a TI, that can sound all too convenient, and feed into the fears about the government trying to control them. The second part is that doctors, and the medicine they prescribe, aren't cure-alls. They aren't magic pills that make the demons of the mind disappear. The pills merely give the chemicals the schizophrenic's brain was previously lacking. I don't want to come off as presenting TIs as some weird freaks for us all to gawk at. I want this to be about how these are real people experiencing a real problem. It may only affect a small subset of the population, data suggesting only 0.66% of adult women and 0.17% of adult men are affected. But it's not like they developed these symptoms from a magic rock falling from space and splitting their skull open with unknown energy. TI's brains simply failed them, either through mental deterioration as they grew older, or in some cases, a life-altering event happened, permanently changing their brain chemistry. The stories I have read for this video are tragic in a way only real life can be. The same applies to psychosis. Though it is not as severe as this form of schizophrenia, it is much more common. Remember that study on the elderly, and how just under 50% said they saw their deceased spouses as ghosts? That isn't something to be brushed off as, "Aye, did grandma's dementia's acting up again? Better wheel her off to the old folks home." It is a person experiencing a love so great, the object of their affection manifests with them in the times they are alone. The fact that is the result of failing mental faculties is irrelevant to the fact imagination is integral to the human experience. Sometimes imagination can project itself onto reality, for better or for worse, and that is completely natural, whether everyone experiences that or not. I started making this video for a couple of reasons. Chief among them is that I feel like my own faculties are failing. As I've entered early adulthood, I have been spending more and more time alone than I have with other people. This has birthed a feeling inside me saying, I am not alone, that there is something with me, just outside my window. This feeling only grows stronger the darker and quieter it is. I don't know if this is something I've felt for forever, or if it is a new feeling that my brain is telling me has been there forever. I'll admit this has biased me when talking about someone's mental state can affect their hallucinations. Maybe I was tipping my hand a bit when describing what suffering from hallucinations can feel like. This partly brings me to the second reason I started making this video. It was the Joseph Cantrell story. The reason it stuck with me more than any other time I had heard the term gang stalking before is because Joseph suffered from ADHD and wouldn't shut the fuck up about it in his journal. And as someone with ADHD, I found that relatable. I also found when he would talk about hearing voices behind his apartment door relatable. That formed a massive pit in my stomach as I thought to myself, how similar am I to Joseph Cantrell? That's what caused me to go down this rabbit hole of ghosts, psychosis, and schizophrenia. Oh, and speaking of ghosts, actually, don't you think it's time I finally answer that question at the start of this video?
What do ghost hunters fear? Your mother. I'm joking, I'm joking.
To actually answer that question, I would have to say, they're the same as the grandma who doesn't want to admit she saw ghost grandpa huffing the poop fumes, or the targeted individual who's afraid of going to the doctor out of fear of being pumped full of vaccines that would convert their sexuality to that of not even God knows about. What these groups have in common is this: they fear that they are losing themselves. A fear they lost their grip on reality, and others will look down on them for it.
Oh my god, who's gonna believe that? Like, what the fuck?
People are gonna believe it because of this reaction, man.
Dude.
I believe that, ultimately, this is what ghost hunters are fighting for. Because you'll need a pretty good reason to get me to sleep in a dark attic at a stranger's house, and I don't even believe in ghosts. Losing oneself is something we can all relate to, not only because Eminem is a prolific artist, but also because the human mind isn't perfect. About 15 to 20% of the human population is neurodivergent, about 1 in 5. Wow, that is the same amount of people who have encountered a ghost. Wait. Does it mean that ghosts cause autism? Casper, you fiendish piece of shit, I knew your dopey smile and jizz-esque body was hiding an ulterior motive. This is to say that the human mind isn't perfect, and can often divert from what is considered typical. And that isn't something to be met with derision, because if people were nicer, there wouldn't be so many ghost hunting shows where they all have to go to the same 5 locations and all make the same trite observations. Derivative. Imagine how the ghosts feel. They can't go even 5 seconds without someone asking their name to what was the most horrific part of their life.
You've been harming Bob Mackey's wife, Carl. I want to see what it's all about. Come and harm me.
I would later regret that command.
Maybe that's why spirit boxes are so bad. Not because they are complete rubbish that spit out random gibberish, but because the ghosts are just fucking with people at this point.
Tell us something about you. Your name?
Yeah, my name's Double Bacon BBQ Cheeseburger. Fuck you, why not? I suppose at the end of this, all I want to say is be good to your fellow man. Subscribe to my channel as I start to ask more and more stupid questions that all end with me saying, be nice, smile.